Okay. And we're just waiting for a few attendees to come in. Welcome to all of you. Happy Wednesday. I hope that everyone's making it through. I know it's very cold outside, so I hope you're warm and cozy wherever you are, maybe with your coffee or tea, maybe hopefully without your kids. They're at school. I want to welcome all of you here. I'm Leah Debitzer. I'm the PTA president for the middle school. I just want to highlight, and maybe you could just briefly hold up your hand, the people we have today with us. We have Dr. Jane Gertler. We have Erica Papier. We have our wellness chairs, Loretta Vickers and Wendy McMillan. And our program is going to last approximately 1 hour. And now I'm going to turn it over to Erica to formally introduce Dr. Gertler. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Smart City Kids Executive Function Workshop. My name is Erica Papier, and for those of you I do not know, I am the parent of a 3rd grade boy at Heathcote and a 7th grade girl at SMS. If you don't mind, just take a minute to note in the Q&A which school your children attend and what grade they're in, just for our information. I want to briefly introduce Smart City Kids so you know we are here if you ever need us. For the past 20 years, Smart City Kids advisors have guided parents and students through the admissions process for entrance into all grade levels, starting in nursery school, continuing all the way through college admissions, including boarding school and special education. We work with families throughout the New York area, as well as across the globe for families who are relocating. Scarsdale has such an international community. Please feel free to share Smart City Kids information if you ever have friends or colleagues moving to the area who need guidance navigating the school system. Smart City Kids also has clients that are schools, and we support them with transition and leadership, admissions, strategic planning, or anything else they may need. In addition, we work with a variety of corporations to provide workshops about parenting, education, admissions, executive function. So please do let me know if you or your significant other's company offers programs of that kind. We also support corporations when they are recruiting new talent by helping to find schools for the relocating families. And our advisors offer parenting sessions. Parenting is quite complicated in general, but especially these days. And we discuss parenting and education related topics. We also have Smart City Tutors, which is an experienced group of tutors who support students of any age and ability if your child is ever in need of any extra help. I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce my very impressive colleague, Dr. Jane Gertler. Dr. Gertler was the director of the Office of Teaching and Learning at the Churchill School and Center, a kindergarten through 12th grade school for students with learning disabilities in New York City. Before Churchill, Jane spent more than 20 years as a school administrator here in Westchester, serving as director of special education in Irvington, prior to becoming the director of special education and director of curriculum, assessment, and professional development in Edgemont. Jane also lived here in Scarsdale for 34 years, and her children went through the Scarsdale school system starting in Quaker Ridge. So our plan for this morning is that Jane will present for around 45 minutes, and then we're going to leave time to answer questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box and we will pose them to Jane at the end of her presentation. I also want to share that Smart City Kids is offering a promotion to parents who attend this workshop, either live today or later through listening to the recording. We're happy to provide a complimentary 60-minute tutoring session in either executive function or in any subject area. And we're also happy to provide a complimentary 15-minute session with one of our advisors, whether that be college, boarding school, etc. If you're interested in either of these offers, you can email me. And I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy schedules to attend this morning. So Jane, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I did live in Scarsdale for 34 years, and my children went through elementary, middle, and high school. They got an amazing education, but I have to say, when they went, there was very little, if any, direct instruction in executive function skills. So it was all left to parents and to kids who were on autopilot, who picked these skills up, except I would say for note taking that they learned how to do in school, and some highlighting strategies. And if, like me, you have kids who are not alike, you may have one child who has all executive function skills. You're not quite sure how he or she developed them, but they're there. And then you have another child who does not. So we were talking just before the webinar started that as a parent, it's much easier when your child struggles with organization or planning or time management or some of the more academic skills like test taking strategies. It's probably easier just to do it for your child than to go through all of the steps of instruction and repetition, etc. But all that does is show your child that you have good executive function skills, but it doesn't help your child at all. So this morning, what I'm going to do is focus on a brief overview of executive function, and then go into some strategies that you can help your child with in terms of organization, planning, time management, and a little bit of goal setting. So that's a lot to do in the short amount of time that we have, but it's only the tip of the iceberg, as they say, in terms of what there is to know about executive function. And you will be receiving a link to a handout for some of the slides, and one of them will have additional resources that you can look at. So if it's okay, I'm going to start to share my screen, and let's see if this all works. There we go. Let me just get this out of my way. Okay, so when I first started doing workshops for parents and professionals, and most of my career has been working with teachers and providing professional development, and in semi-retirement, I continue to do that. And the advantage for me of being remote is that I can provide this all across the country. It doesn't just have to be in the metropolitan area. So that's been very helpful. But when I started, I found this quote from Margaret Mead, which I thought was very appropriate, that we really want to teach our kids how to think, not what to think. And I know in Scarsdale, after my kids graduated, they did away with AP classes, and now they're advanced topic classes in the high school, because they wanted to be able to go deeper than the AP curriculum would allow. And I actually think that that was such a great move, because the goal of all of these advanced courses is really to generate interest. Maybe something will, spark your child's interest in a particular academic area, but also to get them to learn how to think, not what to think, and not to just memorize. So if in the AP classes, if it was a lot of just strict memorization and recall, we had kids who could do really well. And I was in Edgemont, which is very similar to Scarsdale when I was an administrator. So the kids, if they had a great memory, they would do really well. But did they know how to think? Did they know how to problem solve, how to analyze, etc.? And the answer was not always yes. So I just thought I would start with this quote. Okay, so here are some questions about executive function capacities, rather than just going into a definition. So for example, how did you remember to log into this webinar today? That takes an executive function. Your family wants to eat dinner at 7 and you're the cook. How do you get the food on the table in time? That takes planning, prioritizing, goal setting. Someone cuts in front of you at the supermarket checkout lane, which has probably happened to all of us. And what keeps you from yelling? That takes self-regulation, and it takes cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to see things from different perspectives. And you may think if somebody cuts in line with you at the checkout lane, maybe they have an emergency and they have to get through that line. So it's not always that they want to be rude or they just want to get out before you, but there might be something going on. So that's called a cognitive flexibility. Self-regulation would mean you don't start shouting at them. You just give yourself a pause before you ask why they are cutting in line. The clock is ticking loudly in the room where you're reading a book, but you don't hear it. That has to do, again, with attention, with self-regulation. And finally, you've been elected the leader of a family Zoom event. What do? That's planning, that's time management, organization. So those are all things that you need to do on a daily basis, and they all involve executive function skills. So we asked some middle schoolers, and I know that this is primarily middle school, and there may be elementary and high school people on the webinar, but I thought I would start with the middle school. What does executive function mean to a middle school student? And this is these are the responses that we received. Strategies that can be used to make decisions. Executive function, like a team, works together to solve problems and helps you to be creative. In simple terms, executive function means goals that you set personally and ones that you don't even realize. You can use them in school, at sports, or even at home. And then finally, I associate executive function with organization skills. So I thought it was amazing that middle schoolers would come up with these definitions. They're all correct. And I would say the last one is somebody who is using the strategies for organization skills more than some of the other strategies. And that's why they associate EF with organization skills. So this is the organization that I work for. Research ILD has a program called SMARTS, and you could actually look at it online. It's smarts-ef for executivefunction.org. They have developed a program for professionals to use at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And they're also, I think, will be coming out with a Smarts at Home program soon. So their definition of executive function is that it's an umbrella term for the complex cognitive processes that control flexible, goal-directed behavior, as well as the coordination and synthesis of many different processes. So at Churchill, where I work with kids with language-based learning disabilities, we would say this needs to be broken down. There are a lot of $10 words in that sentence. So this is really what executive function is all about. And if you go online and you read articles about executive function or watch videos, etc., there will all be variations on this theme. They may call it something else, but these are the primary elements of executive function. And starting from 12 o'clock, it has to do with organizing, setting goals, working memory, that's a long-term, short-term, and then working memory. And the one way to describe working memory is an area in school that really helps kids is when they work on strategies in math, because math requires a lot of working memory. If you are trying to solve a problem in your head, you have to keep a lot of things, we call it on that tabletop in your head in order to solve the problem. It may include addition, subtraction, multiplication, all three. So that's working memory. And cognitive flexibility, as I mentioned, it's perspective taking. Another example of cognitive flexibility is when you have young children. If they read Amelia Bedelia, that is one of the best series of books to help kids develop cognitive flexibility, because there are so many examples and it has to do with figurative language. So for example, with young children, we may ask them to sketch a picture of what raining cats and dogs looks like. And then we talk about what that means figuratively so that they are taking that different perspective. And then self-monitoring or self-checking, that's self-monitoring your own behavior, and self-checking that has to do with, for example, in school, when kids take a test, what strategies do they use going into the test and when they've completed the test in terms of self-checking. There's a strategy that I explain to teachers. It's called the top 3 hits, and it means helping kids identify their top 3 hits of errors when they've taken an exam. So for example, in math again, or in English, when I speak with high school teachers or middle school teachers and I ask them how long it takes for them to grade an essay, for example, and you have 20 students in your class or 25 students, it takes several hours. And then when you say, well, what do the kids do when after you've written all these comments and then you give them their essay back, what do you see them do? And they say, oh, they go right to the last page, see what the grade is, they put it in their backpack, or they just toss it. And that's not what you want kids to do. That's not how they're going to learn. So there's a strategy for teachers to use called top 3 hits, where kids have to now analyze the essay that you've written all your comments on as a teacher and identify the top 3 areas where they need to improve and use that information the next time they're writing an essay. So that's an academic use of self-monitoring. So this is just an example that I've given to show how executive function skills, how many of them come into play for some simple tasks. And this one is typical. Sarah has to be at school by 8:30. It takes her 5 minutes to brush her teeth, 10 minutes to eat breakfast, and 25 minutes to walk to school. What time will she need to get up? So if Sarah is in middle school or high school, Sarah should be figuring that out. Sometimes it's trial and error when kids realize that they're late, they haven't given themselves enough time, or they have given themselves too much time. But it involves working memory to manipulate the stored information to complete the task about what they have to do in order to get out in the morning. It involves setting goals to get out on time and get to school on time, organization, frustration, and modeling emotions. Frustration because their lunch, they forgot to make their lunch, or they wanted rice checks for breakfast and there's only Cheerios. What are they going to do? Self-monitoring, sustaining effort, processing speed, and then being able to shift focus between tasks. So for very young children, for those of you who have kids in elementary school, and you want them to start to learn this process of being able to get out of the house in time in the morning, and clearly they need to understand how to read a clock, but they also could use a checklist. So very often parents will sit with their child and together they will develop a checklist that they keep posted so that the child knows when he or she gets up in the morning what needs to be done. And by making that checklist visible, you've taken out the need to have good working memory. And for young children, working memory may be a challenge. So the idea of developing executive function skills is to scaffold as you are helping your child become independent. So they're going to need help, but by making a checklist, it still is not mom or dad or a caretaker saying, did you brush your teeth? Did you comb your hair? Did you figure out breakfast? What are you wearing today? Etc. So by having a list, it takes the parent or the caretaker out of the equation and makes the child more independent. So if you have poor planning, organization, or you have difficulty with initiation, these are some of the tasks or the things that you will struggle with. So you can take a minute, and if you see yourself here, then you know that there are some things that you should be working on as well. So I'm going to go into organization. Okay. So we know that it's really important to be organized in order to get through the day, the week, the month without too much frustration. And there are some strategies that you will be able to use for your child when it comes to organization connected to school. So I use this picture, which I think is it's an example of someone who is uber organized. So during the pandemic, I spent most of my time in the Berkshires, and this was one of my friends' homes on Thanksgiving Day. And they were making Thanksgiving dinner just for their family, and her son was in charge. He's in his early 30s. And so she knows the type of work I do, and she was telling me what he does in the morning of Thanksgiving. So I said, would you mind taking a photo, and would you ask Ethan if I could use the photo, which he did. So what he does is he puts out all of the recipes that he's going to use for Thanksgiving on the island, and all of those are the dry ingredients that he needs. To me, it was amazing. I had never seen anything like that. So needless to say, their Thanksgiving dinner, they had some delicious food in a very organized way without anybody running around like, where is the onion? Where's the lemon? Where's the chicken broth? So now these are some questions as parents that I would like you to think about. How do your children organize their assignments now? Do they use a different binder for each subject, or one large binder? Years ago, kids used to use and you may have used something called a Trapper Keeper, which was supposed to be good, but it just, I thought, got a little too cumbersome. Do they color code notebooks and binders by subject? What type of backpack do they use? How is it organized? Do you find moldy peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the backpack? Where do they do their homework? And most importantly, what does that space look like? And what do they do with papers that they don't think they need, but they're afraid to throw away? So with technology today, we've solved a lot of these problems because kids learn how to set up different folders on the computer. And so if they have work that they want to save, it's very easy. It doesn't take up any room in the house, and it's just on the computer. But since teachers still have kids handing in essays where they return them their, paper essays, then the question is, how do you organize that? So if you know the answers to these questions, you're in good shape. If you don't know the answers to any of these questions, why don't you ask your child when he or she comes home from school today? So the organized student at home has a well-organized workspace, and that workspace may be in their bedroom. It may be at the kitchen table, in the family room. It's wherever you and your child have figured out is the best space for your child. Young children, I find, generally like to do their homework in the kitchen or near the kitchen. So if they need help, there's somebody, if you're there or a caretaker is there, there's somebody who can help them who's nearby. Older kids generally like to do their homework in their room. That's where their computer is. So, that's sort of a family decision. The idea when you have an organized workspace is to photograph that workspace and establish a routine for keeping it organized, and also create a routine for organizing backpacks. That may be that it's, every Friday, kids organize their backpacks when they come home from school. Every Sunday, they organize their backpacks before going to school. Again, that's something to discuss with your child, because one of the things that we see in school is when kids have backpacks where they can't find anything, they end up getting penalized. because they may have completed their homework, put it in their backpack, and because the backpack is not organized, it never gets to the teacher. In terms of a workspace being organized, it's just more time efficient if you know where your tools for doing your work are located. So this is an example of the organized student at home, and the toolkit that kids need. Kids should decide with you, what is it that they need in order to do their homework? And that should be easily accessible in their workspace. And for young children, we also suggest a laminated, like a luggage tag that has a list of what they should be taking home and what they should be returning to school. And you can do that very easily with your child. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to photograph the organized desk and backpack. And this is actually Erica's daughter's desk as she watched part of a webinar that I did, and she organized her desk and took a photo. So why take a photo? Well, there's a real easy answer, and that is when you take a photo and your child's desk becomes totally disorganized and there are papers all over the place, you don't have to get into any discussion about why is this disorganized, or why are the papers here, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. There's no reason to. Just take out the photo and say, remember when this desk was organized? Can you get it back into that shape again? And then you walk away. Or your child can keep the photo in somewhere in a desk drawer or someplace. But the goal, again, with executive function development is to help your child become independent, for you not to be doing it for your child or not to be scolding your child, but to give them strategies and approaches where they can do this on their own. So we also have a system called Selective Saving. And when I started doing these webinars, it was way before we used computers, or children and students use computers to save their work. So a lot of this has changed. But what we had suggested parents do and kids do, as at the end of each marking period, after they get their report card, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, they go through their work and they keep samples of their work that they're particularly proud of, an essay, a drawing, a project, etc. Not all of it. So the child needs to make that decision. What are they going to keep? And that could be kept, if it's paper, it could be kept in a file cabinet, and under, saved items for a particular year. And then at the end of the year, they go through that and decide, all right, now what do I want to save from the year? I'm not going to save all of it. When my kids were young, I used to give them each a shopping bag. And when that shopping bag was full, they needed to go through it and select what they wanted to keep and what they wanted to throw away. And clearly this is before electronic files. So if most of your child's work has a digital copy and they can save it electronically, that's terrific. But then they need to identify headings, because we all know we have all of these files on our desktop, but we need to be able to find what we are looking for in a timely fashion. So you can help them identifying headings by year, by semester, season, whatever. What you don't want is for your child to have a backpack full of everything. Nothing is thrown away. Okay, so now let's spend a few minutes talking about time management and homework. And again, I selected this slide several years ago, and when I saw it had the word virus in it, it was like, oh, maybe I need to take it out. But I think it still is appropriate, because it used to be the dog ate my homework. Now it's the computer has a virus, or it disappeared, it's in the black hole on the computer, etc. So in order to help your child with time management, there are some prerequisites. They need to have knowledge of time, understand how to read a clock, and have a sense of the passage of time. They need to have a knowledge of the task that they're being asked to do in order to be able to manage the amount of time they need. And they have to have some sort of estimation of their ability. So if you have a young child who cannot yet tell time, read a clock, etc., this is more challenging. But there's a website called Timed Timer, and they have these clocks that you can buy that show the passage of time. It gets read, I believe it gets read as time passes. And so your child gets to learn about the sense of time. Most of us don't have a very accurate sense of time passing. And one of the things I do when I'm doing a workshop for teachers is I ask them to close their eyes and to raise their hand when they think a minute has passed. And it's almost comical to see hands going up at all different times. So that's not an easy concept, but as kids get older, we have a better sense of time and a better sense of how long it may take us to do something. So when you want to help your child understand the knowledge of the task, here are some things that you want to go through with your child. You want to look at the requirements, break down the assignment into smaller parts, and the child should be saying, have I done any of these before? Do I remember how long they take? So when you're trying to help your child understand and manage their own time, they do have to do some recording as they do assignments. And if they've done parts of the assignment before, they can use that time it took previously to estimate how long each part will take. When you first start doing this with your child, helping them with time management, it's going to be a guess when they estimate how long something will take. And again, I just so that we do, when I work with teachers, I have them do this with kids in school as well. Because it's different for each child. It may take one child 20 minutes to do something, and it may take another child 30 minutes, and it may take another child 45. And I know that when I work with kids with learning disabilities, one thing that we always told the parents is that if your child is spending more than 45 minutes on a particular assignment, which is what the teachers decided was, more than reasonable, you need to let the teacher know. Teachers don't know if it's taking your child an hour to do something that the teacher thought would only take 25 minutes. The teacher needs to know that because they need to be able to help your child, to modify the assignment. There are a lot of strategies that they can use. But if you don't let the teacher know, they have no sense of that, and they think that they're giving assignments that are okay in terms of the length of the assignment. So again, this is about estimating time. And what you want your child to do, if you look at the third bullet, check in with, this is for your child, as time passes. Do you need more time or less time? How accurate was your estimate? So while your child is doing homework, they're also doing a subtask, which is following the amount of time it takes them to do something. So whether your child has a paper assignment book or a digital one, I'm going to show you a way of helping them learn how to estimate how much time it will take them to do an assignment. So this is very simple. The kids can make one of these charts on their own. And in this column, it's the assignment and the materials that they need. And then they estimate how long they think it will take them to do it. And then they also should put down, I'm going to skip this, the order in which they want to do their assignments. So let's say a typical night, a child has math, ELA, and a science assignment. What are they going to do first? What are they going to do second, etc.? And I know there are some people who think you should always start with the one that you think will take you the longest. You should do that first. Generally, the one that takes you the longest is also the most challenging. So for some kids, doing that first takes so much energy that they're not able to complete their other assignments. So for some kids, it's best to start with the easiest, quickest assignment first, because they get it done and then they put that check mark, asterisk, whatever they want in the column that says done, and they feel good about it. So I don't think there's any right way or wrong way for prioritizing assignments, but a child has to look at the amount of time they have and then set the order. If it turns out, let's say they decide to do math first, then ELA, then history. If that doesn't work for them, then the next time or 3 weeks later, when they realize this is not working, they'll change the order. But it's a little bit of trial and error, but there's not just one way. So it is important for them to estimate. So let's say your child comes home with 2 pages of word problems and they estimate it's going to take 30 minutes. Then when they finish doing it, how long did it actually take? Did it take 30 minutes, 25 minutes, 40 minutes, etc.? Why is this important? Well, it's important because the next time they have to do an assignment that's similar, this estimated time box will change because they're going to use their previous experience. So I would strongly say that if your child struggles at all with getting homework done in an efficient way, you might want to have them try something like this. So the only other thing I wanted to say is, as parents, we always say to your child, what homework do you have? And then they'll say, I don't know. Well, now they have their digital planners. Some of them still use paper planners. And the teachers are so much better about making sure the kids write it down. But they should still write down, if there's an area where they have no homework, they should write that down so that you know and they know that they don't have to include that in any estimation of how much time they need to do homework. So time management, which is a follow-up to homework, also has to do with your child being able to make decisions about things that they must do, that they want to do, and that they could do. So let's look at this first time management one, must-dos, and here's the list. I think you might have some additional ones. If children go to religious school, that may be a must-do. If they take music lessons or art or whatever it is, that's something that might be on that must-do list in their opinion and in yours. So this is very individual, but these are pretty straightforward. Then they have the want-tos. So again, in some families, kids want to do so much, and parents, we want our kids to be so busy all the time, but that takes a lot of time. So you have to look at this want-tos and figure out what is important for your child and for your family. And here are the could-dos. So the easiest way to look at could-dos is there's no set time frame. It's different from the want-tos. Like I have soccer at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays, or I have a dance class at 5 o'clock on Thursdays. That's a want-to, and it's a set time. This is, there's no set time. I really want to do it, but I have to figure out whether or not I have time. So when you talk to your child about time management, think about must-dos, want-tos, dos, and could-dos. And you can have them set up a chart, what they must do, what they want to do, and what they could do. And this could be for a week, or it could be a daily activity guide, as in this slide. But I wouldn't go out further than a week. Here's the weekly planner. This is where you would put all of those must-dos, want-tos, and could-dos. When we have kids doing this in school, we start with like 3 o'clock, because from the morning until 3 o'clock, they're in school Monday to Friday. So there's not much they have to fill in here. I do know there are some kids who take ice skating at 5 o'clock in the morning. So they would definitely have to put that into their planner at the top of their planner. Here's a typical 7th grader. This is their school planner, and you'll see that it's color coded. So that helps the student a lot. And I would recommend that if your child struggles at all with organization, you have things color coded as much as possible. And this is a typical 8th grader. I don't remember what PC is, but you can see that this is a student where it was everything started after school. So for homework, one of the things that you also want to do with your child is to define the small tasks that make up large tasks, specifically when they have a long-term task. So that could be a research paper or a project. And we say with older, middle school and high school kids, you want to start backwards. If a teacher says, this is due in 3 weeks, you work with your child, if the teacher hasn't done it, to start backwards from their due date to help them set up a schedule for completing each subtask. With kids that have any sort of learning challenge, we would always say to teachers, you can't just give them an assignment and say it's due 2 weeks from now. You have to have benchmark dates. When do they have to hand in their note cards? When do they have to hand in an outline, etc.? Because just having a due date is not going to work for these kids. And that's true for many kids. So if your child's teacher is not doing it for whatever reason, this is something that you can do at home. So again, this is just an example of a large task, and these are all the small tasks, and you can put these on the calendar when they would be due. So now we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting, and this is something you can do with your child. It's the beginning of the second semester in some schools, so this might be a good time to do that. Goals need to be clear, appropriate, steps. You have to have their steps, and your child has to be able to evaluate obstacles. So for example, if your child is doing B minus work in a subject and they say that they want to get an A, that really is not appropriate as a goal right away. So you want to set something up that's realistic, and then the steps to be able to achieve that goal. What I like about this system of goal setting is it also has the child evaluate obstacles. What could possibly get in the way? So let's take a look at this. So a long-term goal would be to get a B+ in science. This was for a student who was getting a B, so this was a more realistic goal. And here are the steps towards that goal. Study 30 minutes a day, go to my teacher when I don't understand, organize class notes every day, and then maybe I'll be able to get a B+ in science. So the student has articulated the steps that the student will need to take in order to get a B+ in science. It's not the teacher saying, this is what you need to do. It's the student saying what he or she needs to do. So again, it's something that you can help your child with. Let's look at the obstacles. What are some ways to overcome obstacles? So for example, I forgot my notes at school. Here's what I could do. I didn't understand the lesson and couldn't do my homework. Here's what I could do. I was too busy with other work. Here's what I could do. So in this system of goal setting, and this is from SMARTS, what you want to do with your child is if let's say your child has a goal similar to this, you talk about what the steps, what they think the steps are to achieve that goal, and what could get in the way, and what they could do about it. And the best part of this is you're having this discussion before the obstacle happens. So nobody's frustrated, nobody's having a meltdown. It's a very reasonable, civil discussion. For example, say kids want to do their homework, they want to spend extra time studying at night, but they're going on vacation. They're going to be on an airplane. They're going to be at grandma's. What are they going to do? They should be thinking about that when they're thinking about how they want to reach their goal and come up with some solutions to that. So I would say that the obstacle, considering the obstacles when they haven't occurred and coming up with solutions, is a very strong point for goal setting. So here are just a couple of other things that you can do to promote growth and executive function growth in your kids. And clearly it's to praise your child. And we say to use labeled praise. So if one of the challenges in your house is having your child get the backpack organized, when they do have it organized, you're giving them labeled praise. Thank you for getting your backpack organized. Make it clear why that mattered. Now we can get out of the house on time tomorrow. And so you don't want to just say, great job. You want to be more specific than that and let the child know that you know that your child worked hard to accomplish the goal. And you also want to reward their effort. And then finally, you can encourage flexibility. So for example, I think anybody who's taken Psych 101 has seen this picture of the woman who looks a little bit like a witch and the woman with a side profile of a beautiful woman with maybe there's a feather coming out of her scarf. So you want to encourage flexibility. If there are going to be changes in your child's schedule, excuse me, you want to preview those changes. If you have a child who really does not do well with change, make sure that you preview those changes. Breaking tasks down into steps, building in choice, everyone needs choice, and allowing some additional time. Those are some simple ways to encourage flexibility. And then finally, these are a list of resources, and that's going to be in one of the handouts. So the SMARTS is one of them. There's another resource, it's called, the website is understood.org. It was originally designed for parents of children with some sort of a learning disability, but it's so much more than that. It's a great website for parents. It's a great website for professionals, and I would encourage you to take a look. So I think that's it, and I will stop sharing. Okay, so we have about 12 minutes for Q&A.
Just really quickly, thank you again. So much of this is really needed in my house, and I'm going to greatly benefit from it. And I hope that our audience will too. We did have one question in regards to saving work. What do you do when you have a child who says, I don't care what we save?
Okay, so, well, first of all, it would be good to find out why they don't care. And what you might have to do is you might have to start by helping them. So for example, if it's are you talking about a young child or middle school?
It looked like the person asking the question might have a middle schooler.
Okay, so they must have a subject. You know, we all have subjects that we do better in than other subjects. So as a parent, what you would do is try and help them identify a piece of work from a subject that they enjoy, that they do well in, and save that. It could be a piece of artwork that they save, because it doesn't matter what it is if you have a child who's reluctant, but it does give you the opportunity to have the discussion as like if they select a piece of artwork, what is it about this piece of artwork that you like? And you could give your opinion, what you like about it, but find out what's going on in your child's mind. If your child absolutely doesn't want to save anything, it's usually a student who's struggling. So then you need to find out why that is as well. And we find that kids want to save work. They're going to save the work that they're most proud of. So if your child has nothing that they're proud of, I think you have a bigger issue.
Some other questions appeared. What if your child actively does not want to organize their digital work into folders? They strongly reject any effort to suggest folders.
Okay, well, the proof will be in the pudding. If they are able to be successful in school without doing that, you don't have too much to say about it. Other than at some point, as a parent, you can say, I get it, you don't want to do it, I'm not quite sure I understand why. But if your grades are what they should be, and this isn't interfering, I guess you have that organization plan in your head. The other question to ask them was, do they organize their music online? I mean, what is it that they organize in their life? They have to organize something. So if they do that, then let's try one subject area. Why don't you just organize it? If it's a high school kid, why don't you just keep your essays for English in a digital file? And one reason why you might want to do that is, guess what? You don't know, maybe next year you're going to have a teacher who's going to ask you to write a similar essay. And you've already done 3/4 of the work. So why wouldn't you want to save it in an organized way? You have to show some benefit to the child.
There's another question here that I could be posing myself, but it comes from another audience member. It says, my child refuses to keep an agenda, loses it regularly, and is becoming a battle I try to avoid. So do you have any advice around that?
Yes. So the question would be, if a child refuses to use an agenda, what's going on at school? Because I don't know any teacher today who doesn't have children using a planner. So that would be the first question. Do they use their planner at school? And if they're not, was this a child? I don't remember the whole question. Were they able to do their homework?
It doesn't state. It's a middle schooler. And okay. I think part of it is that so much of the work and the assignments and everything are all on Schoology at the middle school. And so all they have to do is go and look on that. Whereas for my own child, I think it would be very beneficial to actually put pen to paper. Okay.
So if they use Schoology and they're able to complete their assignments, then they don't need they don't need the whole weekly planner, but they should be doing something in terms of estimating the amount of time it will take them to do that assignment on Schoology and then putting in the real time that it took them, because they need the agenda not for schoolwork, for all the other things in their life. If your child has sports and art and all these other things, and they also want time to go to a friend's house or whatever it is, why do you have to keep track of that? They need to keep track of that. So that would be the reason for them to have an agenda. It's not about their schoolwork in this case, if they're using the online planner. It's about trying to manage the rest of their life.
Loretta, do you want to take over for the couple others?
Yes, I'm looking at these questions and I have one. Thank you. This is from a parent. Thank you so much, Jane. The proactive goal setting and problem solving is fantastic. However, for tweens and teens who have executive functioning weakness and anxiety, it doesn't always work immediately. It is a process. Kids sometimes are unable to engage immediately. What should a parent do?
Oh, well, you have to scaffold. Most of my career was working with teachers who work with kids who need repetition and scaffolding. And so it's basically the goal of a parent is to gradually relinquish their responsibility and give it to the child. So for example, when I talked about having a checklist of what a child has to do in the morning, eventually they're not going to need that checklist. So if you're doing goal setting with your child, you help them establish, and again, one of the easiest ways for parents to start with goal setting for kids is to choose a non-academic area. It may be sports. They want to learn how to ice skate. It may be a performing arts or a fine arts area. Whatever it is, I would choose a non-academic area, and you go through with them. So if you want to learn to ice skate, what are some of the things that you're going to need to do? And because that involves committing time to it, practice, etc. The same thing with if the child is into basketball. And I think coaches do an incredible job helping kids develop executive function skills and goal setting. A coach would never say to a kid, you need to be a better basketball player. A coach may say, you need to work on dribbling, and here are the steps. And it can include a certain number of minutes a day, whatever it is, the strategies to use. So as a parent, you know your child at the beginning, this is going to be something where you and your child are going to have a discussion, and you may be doing a lot of the suggesting, but make sure your child has that opportunity. And then you have to check in with your child. This is not a goal setting that's going to be like you're not checking in for 3 months. So I hope that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with scaffolding. It's not, you're not going from A to Z overnight.
We only have just a few more minutes, and I'm a little concerned that we'll get to all of the questions here. I do see a couple of hands raised. If you could try to put it in the Q&A chat so that we can go about it in an orderly fashion, and we'll try to get to as many as we can before we have to say goodbye. What do you do when your kids have excellent working memory when it comes to math, but when it comes to the less preferred activity, that working memory is not available? Is it motivational, and how do you keep them motivated in less preferred activities?
It'd be great if it was a little more specific than that, because working memory is being able to access and keep more than one piece of information in your head at the same time. What you're talking about may be more long-term memory, where the child has something but they can't access it. So it would be developing some strategies to help them access it. And there are mnemonics, there are crazy phrases, there are checklists, note cards, there are all sorts of ways of doing that. But that question is a little too broad for me to exactly know what the parent is thinking.
How do you apply all of this with a child with mild ADD?
A child with mild ADD needs this more than kids without ADD. So again, for example, homework. That's a child who really needs to work with you, the parent or the caretaker, on the estimated time they think it will take to do something, and then the actual time, because very often kids with ADD think it will take them so long to do their homework that they're not even going to try. And that's really not the case. So that requires a parent. Kids with ADD, in terms of homework, their abilities to sustain their attention for more than 20 minutes, for example, may be difficult. So when you're working with your child to help them figure out their homework schedule, make sure you put breaks in there. And that's very, very important. So if you have a child who can't spend more than 20 minutes doing homework, and the math assignment is going to take 30 minutes, then you can help your child, certainly at the beginning, that's the scaffolding part, figure out what they're going to do after 20 minutes. They're going to have a 5-minute break, and then they're going to get back to it. I think that that's really very important. Kids with ADD also need help with organization. That's the kid where you really want to do the photo of the workspace. so that when it gets messed up, with a photo of a backpack that's neat, so that you can then go back and say, can you try and get it back to what it looked like when we took the photograph? But you just have to scaffold.
We are out of time, but I do have a question about scaffolding, and a parent asked, what is scaffolding?
Good. Scaffolding is step by step. So for example, you're teaching your child how to ride a bike. You don't put them on the bike and say, put your feet on the pedals and go. You're holding the bike, you're holding it firmly, then you're holding the bike with one hand, then you're letting go and running behind them, and then they're off on their own. It's breaking it down. When I talked about like homework, an assignment where you break it down into steps, scaffolding is being able to take the task or the goal that your child has and break it down into steps. So for example, if the goal in your house is to have a calm morning before the kids get out of the house, what are all those things that need to be done? One of those things may be that your child needs to pick out clothing the night before. And so scaffolding would be helping your child do that at the beginning, and then later on just saying, make sure you pick out your clothing before you go to sleep. You're not sitting there in their room with their, scaffolding takes time. It requires a commitment from the parent or the caretaker to break things down and to help the child step by step until they can be independent. But it doesn't mean, you're not throwing them into the deep end, so to speak, but you're also not continually doing it for them. Like if a parent goes in, a key to me is like when I see parents in restaurants with kids, and the kids are not little ones, they're middle or high school, and the kid turns to the parent and says, what should I order? That is not a child who's learned how to be self-sufficient in any way, even in a restaurant. So the idea is to give your child those tools step by step, and then start to move away from holding their hand. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
We have so enjoyed everything that you've had to share with us. I know that there are some more questions. We'll try to get those answered offline perhaps. And I know that you certainly can reach out to, like we said before, Smart City Kids and set up an appointment or, whatever it is, but they can certainly help you over at Smart City Kids. Leah, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we had 88 attendees, which is really well attended. And I wanted to thank everyone who shared their morning with us. I want to give a huge thank you to Jane. Your information was so helpful, especially in my house with 3 different kids, 3 different levels of school, trying to figure it out. So thank you, much appreciated. And thank you as well to Erica for helping to facilitate and organize, and Loretta and Wendy, our wellness committee chairs, who are always bringing useful information to our parent and teacher community. And just one last thing, Erica, did you have any last words before we close?
Yeah, I just want to thank the SMS PTA and the Wellness Committee for giving us this opportunity, and a very, very big thank you to Jane for her tremendously helpful guidance. And for those parents who joined late, I did just want to mention again that Smart City Tutors is happy to offer a complimentary 60-minute tutoring session, either in a subject area or executive function, as well as a complimentary 15-minute session with one of our team advisors. So I renamed myself and I put my email address for those of you that wanted to take advantage of either of those offers. You can email me for the offer code, and the session obviously has been recorded and will be distributed in the school e-blasts along with some of Jane's slides from the presentation today. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much.